welcome everybody to the ATB NFL Live Show. We're back for consecutive weeks again, which is great. Definitely happy to be back and doing this every week again with you guys. So I have joining me as always Tony and now Zach, who's going to be on full time moving forward as long as he's able to do it. So good to see you again here, Zach. Let's start with just some of the news. The first thing I want to talk about, though, let's talk about a little bit about the Thursday game because it was another disappointing game for the Buccaneers and for Tom Brady, who recently divorced Tom Brady as well. We found out over this past week. Kind of thought that was going to be the case from all the reports we were getting, but wanted to talk about that a little bit. What did you guys think about the Thursday game? Do you think that the Bucs are pretty much done at this point? Do you think there's too many injuries and other issues going on? Let's hear from Zach first on that.
I think the prime concern for Tampa right now is that they cannot run the football. You have Leonard Fournette and you can't run the football. That's concerning. And it's not a testament or like an indictment on the running backs. It's entirely has to do with the offensive line right now. They were banged up coming into the season. Things haven't gotten any better. It's leaked into the running game. It's leaked into the passing game. Who's on Thursday night now? Troy Aikman and
that's the Monday night crew.
That's the Monday night.
So.
Who are the commentators? Al Michaels.
Kirk and Al Michaels.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
You heard Kirk saying it on Thursday night when they were throwing those basically flat outs to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. That's their run game now. That's the only way they can do the run game. And as a Virginia Tech fan, I have seen that for years under Brad Cornlinson, and it's not fun. It's not good. Unfortunately, I'm not going to comment on Brady's divorce. That is private matters. It's a bit personal. We all know somebody who's been affected by something like that, and it's not easy to talk about. We don't know all the situation. However, as far as football, Tom Brady's 45. It's either going to be he ends on his terms, or nature ends them very quickly on nature's terms. And the aging is coming. He can still play, but he still needs protection. And I don't think he's going to be going anywhere within the next year and a half. At this point, what is 7 rings compared to 10? You are the most accomplished quarterback in history. Tampa needs to blow it up and see what happens and how you rebuild from here.
What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, for the game itself, I think Baltimore, they needed to take care of business in a close game late. So really good for them. And you can make a case where they're the 4th best team in the NFL just because of how just tightly bunched that 4 to 16 grouping is. And so I think this is a win that they absolutely needed. And they did it in an interesting way. Isaiah likely going off because Mark Andrews leaves early injured. Gus Edwards got a little banged up. They took care of business when they needed to. On the Brady front, yeah, I think people have been saying for years that Brady's cooked. They always want to be the first one to predict it. And so I've always been hesitant on that front. But this feels so different where, like Zach said, the offensive line isn't getting better anytime soon. The pass catchers are great, but things just are looking out of sync. And I think it's because Brady just doesn't feel comfortable out there. And then the run game, not only is the run game terrible, but it is so emphasized. Todd Bowles keeps on telling his Byron Leftwich, you got to run the football. You got to run the football. We're passing too much. And that is just a scary proposition. This is a team that is outside of the playoff picture right now. And I don't see them getting back in without Brady just taking over the offense and saying F you to Bowles on the running stuff. Cause it's just not working for them. This is the first time I've seen this level of weakness from Brady. And as a Bills fan who had to deal with him for a while, I'm not particularly sad about it.
Yeah, and I think you guys kind of hit it on the head. The problem with Brady at this point, right, is it's not so much that he's playing poorly, because I've watched some of their games. We've gone back and watched it. He can still throw the football. He can still do the stuff that he's been doing to be so successful with the Buccaneers so far. But he is very reliant on his supporting cast at this point, not only just because that's the type of quarterback he's always been. He's not a guy that can create out of structure or anything like that. He can evade the rush. We know how good he is in the pocket, but he's not going to create offense out of nothing, right? And that's not really an indictment for a guy that plays like him, but when the offense starts to falter around him, it's not as easy for him to just say, I'm just going to put the team on my back, because he just doesn't, that's not his skill set, right? So the running game not working has made it more difficult to pass. It just makes everything kind of snowball, right? And the defense had injuries going into that game too. Like, until this team is either fully healthy or until they can figure out the offensive line in a way that the run game can get going, I think you guys are right. It's going to be really hard for them to get into or stay in the playoff picture. I mean, the NFC South is an absolute dumpster fire. So maybe, if they can just get to maybe 9 wins, that probably wins this division, honestly. But it's going to be tough sledding, because until like I said, the injuries get cleared up, or until they figure out just a way to run the football like effectively. They don't have to be great. They just have to not have to throw the ball just to do anything, and put more pressure on Brady with an offensive line that's playing like it is. That's kind of the key. Until that happens, though, we could see the first true losing season with Brady at quarterback and really ever. So it's going to be interesting to see how the end of the season goes for them. But
I don't think they win the division.
It's going to be hard, because like, even the Falcons are not a bad football team. They have their own issues. The Panthers seem to be like surging for no apparent reason. Like, we'll see what happens, but that division is going to be.
I'll cover some of that in our scores later. But
yeah, for sure. But so moving on, there is a big quarterback move today that it's not for any like benching or anything. We already saw that Matt Ryan is getting essentially benched for Sam Ehlinger. That's its own thing. But Malik Willis getting his first career start due to an injury to Ryan Tannehill today against Houston. I want to talk about this a little bit, because this was a guy that going into the draft process, we knew how talented he was. It was just about how high is a guy like him going to get drafted, where he's an older player for someone who has so much development to make. I think he was 23 at the time of the draft. It felt like it was definitely a big risk if you took him high, and ultimately he wasn't taken high. It was a 3rd round pick. What is your expectations for this first start, especially? What do you think about him kind of moving forward? Do you think that this could be the catalyst that might make that transition happen, if not now, very soon, from Tannehill to him? Let's start with Zach here.
As far as how he's going to do, it's going to be interesting. So like, he did get all the first team reps this week. It is so like Tannehill's sick. That is why he is missing the game. It is also worth noting that he did suffer that ankle sprain at the end of the game last week. But that was the one thing that struck me when I saw how they handled that end of game procedure after Tannehill was evidently hurt. He could not walk. Like, watching all of that, and they had Malik Willis in the backfield ready to receive a handoff. Why are you running a trick play with your backup rookie quarterback when your starting quarterback is incredibly hurt? Take him out and let the man finish the game. What are you doing? Like, that made zero sense. I was watching that. They fumbled the ball, and I'm just like, what are you doing right now? What are you doing? So I'm a bit concerned with the way, and I remember this in the draft cycle of like how hyped everybody was for Malik Willis. And I mean, Kenny Pickett was the first one to go. And is he the first one to start of any team? The first rookie forever?
Bailey Zappi, I think.
Bailey Zappi, okay.
May have played first. I don't know if he's got to start then. Well, yeah, it would have been the next week. So I think he started first. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like we've seen, and right there, we've seen Bailey Zappi, Skylar Thompson,
yeah,
and Kenny Pickett have playing time in the NFL this season. Rookie quarterbacks this isn't the regular rookie quarterback class where we're going to be watching them all come in and just take over right now. This was rightfully pushed back for a reason. I would argue you're going to see more quarterbacks taken in the 2023 draft start closer to day one next season than you have this year.
Yeah,
so it's going to be very interesting to see. This is a luck start for Willis. If he happens to do well, I don't think that stops Ryan Tannehill from getting his job back, because they are 4-2. They are, like, it's not like we're talking about a team that is down in the dumps and like need me a pick me up. They're rightfully at the top of the AFC South right now. So,
all right, what do you think, Tony?
So, I do agree with a lot of what Zach said. I just disagree on the large picture result of this. I think that Willis is going to come in and play a very muted game script. They're going to probably cater the offense, a lot of running, just using him and Henry, especially against a run D as bad as Houston. It's a very good team to get your first start against and look good. His accuracy issues, yeah, they're probably going to show up, but also his like the electric playmaking ability that doesn't exist with Ryan Tannehill, get those big plays. I think we're going to see some of that today. And I think if he plays even just above average, I think there is a chance that he could take this job and run, just because they have been winning ugly in Tennessee for the longest time. Mike Vrabel's an incredible coach where like the team is down and out roster wise, but he knows how to get them to just win ugly. And it's great, but winning ugly doesn't get you far in the playoffs. We've seen it every year with their early exits. We've seen it just stifled offense and not getting it done. And I think what Malik Willis does is he adds that explosive potential to your offense. So you're not just giving Derrick Henry the ball 30 times and hoping one of those goes for 80 yards. You're designing a run game that makes Henry's life easier. And you also have this electric quarterback, Malik Willis, who can run it and also sling it downfield. I just think it really forces your range of outcomes to the extremes. You're either going to be really good or really bad. And if it's really bad, yeah, they'll yank the chain, they'll pull back and put Tannehill back in. But I think they might like to ride this wave of just offensive explosion as the next level of where they want to take this thing.
Yeah, I think you both make a lot of good points. I think for me, when I studied Willis, because I did a lot of work on the quarterback class because of Steelers, obviously, I wanted to be familiar with that. I knew they were going to take somebody. Willis ultimately was the guy that I felt if you want to swing for the fences, right? If you want to just take a guy who, yeah, he might not be good at all. Like there's a very high probability that he never does anything in the NFL. But if anybody in this past class was going to become a Pro Bowl quarterback or better, it was definitely him, right? You could just tell from the arm strength, the athleticism, just the way he plays. It's exactly what modern quarterbacks are asked to do in a lot of offenses. And I think in this game specifically, I'd be very surprised if he throws the ball 20 times or more. I think that they understand that at this point, the offense already runs that way to a certain degree. They do not want to put the ball in the air very much. They'll try some shots with him. I do think they are going to try to dial up some plays that are easy for him to read, and he just takes a shot. He has that ability. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 10 plus carries as well. Like they're going to use everything that he does well, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still struggles. It's early in his development. He's a guy that I think is going to take a year or two just to get to a point where he could consistently start games for you. So I don't think Tannehill's job is at risk at all. I think unless he just is so unbelievable they can't possibly go back to him, Tannehill's going to be the starter the rest of this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of next year as well. I think that's just where Willis is at with his development, unless he proves me otherwise. But it's going to be fun to see. It's going to be more fun offense, I think, for sure, obviously. But fun is not always better. It just depends on the situation. I think what the Titans have been doing for years now, it makes sense with the personnel they have, and it's gotten them a lot of success. But you are right, Tony. They are eventually going to have to find a way to become more explosive on offense just to allow them to have that higher ceiling. They're kind of almost what the Steelers have been doing. I like to compare Vrabel to Tomlin a lot in terms of the way that they coach because they've gotten a lot out of their teams. It just hasn't mattered because their teams just haven't been good enough once they get there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this week, though. But before we get into the games, we do want to talk trade rumors a little bit. Trade deadline is going to be coming up here this week.
Could I add one more thing on Malik Willis?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So because it's super interesting because like I have a little deeper connection to Malik Willis because one, I live in Virginia and went to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech was actively recruiting Malik Willis and he had committed to Virginia Tech and then decommitted in 2016. So he was supposed to be there the last 2 years. And even the trouble with like a player at Virginia Tech who's like a mid-major and low major right now. And like you look at a guy like Hendon Hooker who was at the school and went for 2 years and then whatever. That's the problem with then you get into teams like Liberty. Who do independent teams play? You can make your own schedule. And it doesn't really always work out for the best. Now, the move to get Hugh Freeze was great for them. However, they're still a really weird school and their schedule is very strange, which is why like with your North Dakota States and all these quarterbacks who do really well and they jump off the page. I remember watching his bowl game his last year and seeing some of the throws and I was just like, oh wow. But it's just not always consistent because who do they have around them? It's still a small independent school in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. Like you have to bet, and that's the problem with balancing out some of these quarterbacks, where I think that's what you were saying. Like, if there's any quarterbacks, that's a quarterback to swing for the fences. However, you haven't really seen him with the best around him, and you don't know if you'll ever see him with the best around him. So you've seen what could happen, but you've also seen what has happened. And I mean, Liberty was never competing for a bowl or for a national championship or anything like that while he was there. So just like those little things, it'll be interesting to see, like, if he does blow us out of the water and really does challenge. But I do think it's going to take him a 2 more years, at least the end of this year, before he's ready to actually like threaten a starting position.
Right. So, yeah, that's the thing where I'm at with it too. So, but let's get into trade rumors. Trade deadline, like I said, is this week. So we definitely want to talk a little bit about some of the rumors. I actually want to start here because one of the players that have been talked about the most is the Steelers receiver Chase Claypool. Now, I was big about him being the slot this year. I felt like it's a better skill set fit for him. I thought that'd be his best chance to kind of reclaim some of the magic that was his rookie season, where he had almost 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. I think it was 11 total. But the offense is just so bad. It's really hard to evaluate the receivers in this offense. I think they definitely haven't played well for the most part, outside of George Pickens, because he just hasn't gotten the opportunities to show how good he is most of the time. But it's really hard to evaluate them. And I think for Chase, it would make sense for him to get a fresh start somewhere else. I think his skill set just isn't getting used here. And he isn't great at certain things that kind of make this offense hard for him. Like, he's not the best route runner. His consistency is off. He doesn't have the best jump ball ability despite being, 6'4", 230 pounds. So I would be interested in seeing him in a different offense. But it sounds like from all the talk today that they're just not willing to deal him for anything that's reasonable. And I get it to a certain degree. You don't want to make it harder on your rookie quarterback in a year where you're trying to evaluate him and see what he's going to be able to do next year. But at the same time, I doubt he's on the team after next year. And maybe you get a good comp pick for him if he has a good season next year. It might not be worth trading him now. But this is a team that is, and I'll just be honest, if they're not 2-6 after today, I will be very shocked. So they're going to be a team that's basically guaranteed to have a top 10, if not 50, if at worst or best case scenario, probably top 15 draft pick. You got to sell some guys. You have to get some draft capital to kind of expedite this rebuild. So I would like to see them move him if they can get something actually valuable for him. And that might be the problem. I think teams just aren't biting. In general, the Steelers will kind of just stay with them. They in general need to see, they need to sit down and evaluate what guys do we think are going to be here long term. Because just lost Tony, so hopefully he's all right. But let's see if we can get him back here in a minute. But they need to evaluate who's going to be here when they're good. Because right now they're not a good football team. They're just not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You need to decide what guys are going to be here when you're good. What guys do you believe in that you're going to be able to develop? And if they're on an expiring deal or if they're just not somebody you see as a long-term piece. I know it's not what the Steelers do, as someone who's been a fan of them for his entire life. But you have to consider it. You need to get draft capital to be able to fill in some of the holes that are very obvious on this roster. And I don't expect them to do it, but I would very much like to see them move. Maybe if someone wants to throw you a late round pick for, Trubisky or something, just as a backup option, because you already have Rudolph, or even Rudolph himself, whatever it is, just get rid of anyone you can that's not going to be a part of this team when they're good. So What do you think? Here's that.
So slight update. We did just get a message from Tony. He will be back. Yeah. His laptop crashed, so he's rebooting and we'll be back. But yeah, no, it's interesting. The Steelers, like you said, as a Dolphins fan, you're talking to somebody who's watched a perpetual rebuild for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And while it's really, really nice to sit there and be like, oh yeah, we've never had to rebuild. Sometimes, things just get out of control. People get too old. You can't find the replacements in time. And that's look, it's easy to sit here and say after watching everything that maybe the Steelers should have punted on Ben Roethlisberger a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But it is also Ben Roethlisberger. You're talking about one of the most prolific quarterbacks and a string of prolific quarterbacks to come through the Steelers and be another player that everybody knows and loves and be with the franchise. So it made sense. We can't fault them for it. Look at what Tampa's doing with Brady right now. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think you have to really sit down and look long-term at what you're going to do and just maybe understand that a year or two with a losing season. Look, Mike Tomlin has been coaching for how long?
15 years,
15 years. If you haven't had a losing season in 15, 16 years, you are allowed to have like one or two and not be
not if
fired.
not if you're a Steelers fan. Trust me.
But that's nuts.
They want
That's
him gone.
nuts.
They've wanted. There's fans that have wanted him gone for like since he was hired. So that's the whole other thing. But
that's nuts. And again, as a Dolphins fan, enjoy consistency, because that's I would say one of my biggest arguments in sports in general is how quick fans and teams are to turn on head coaches and front office. Like, obviously you can kind of know if it's going bad, like off rip. Like, look, we're watching Nathaniel Hackett right now. It doesn't look good. But like if all of a sudden Mike McDaniel were to start like super struggling, I don't think you could look at the very first. I don't think you couldn't ignore the first like 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Just throw that out, because you can't. You have to factor it in. You have to give these players, these coaches, a little more time sometimes. If it looks like, that's why I love what Detroit's been doing. Have the results been there with Matt Campbell? No, but the culture is. And they're starting to come around. They just need to get those final pieces in play. They've lost all 1-score games.
Right.
Like it's like literally all these little things. So sometimes the rebuild is necessary. So the Steelers just need to really sit down and figure out, like, hey, are we going to keep Terrell Edmonds for the long term, or should we think about maybe not worrying about it? Are we going to keep random person on the offense that like we could invest in them, but do we really think it's going to benefit us long? You have to it's going to be time to sit down and have those really, really tough conversations and really think about blowing it up and rebuilding.
Yeah, absolutely. So what rumors have you been hearing, Zach, that you're interested in talking about?
So I think the big one right now is Alvin Kamara with the Saints, because after what we saw with Christian McCaffrey, geez, I would love to talk today. Christian McCaffrey and James Robinson, all of these running backs moving around. You've got another very, very super talented running back in New Orleans who is, I mean, I have him on my fantasy team. He's not played the greatest this year.
I do.
Ever since Drew Brees went out, they really haven't figured out how to use them. I despise the Taysom Hill era because they just refused to use him at all during that time.
Yeah.
So his usage has been so questionable. But then literally last night he has a deleted tweet. Nope, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying. So look, we all understand that the NFL's a business, and if somebody were to come around and be like, "Oh, hey, here's 3 first-round picks for Alvin Kamara," that's happening.
Yeah.
But I think one of the bigger things that people need to take into consideration is he still has an active court hearing that he has not returned back to Las Vegas for. He will play this season. He will most likely be suspended next season. Yeah. So if anybody's trading for him, they're trading on a severe 1-year rental. Like, we're not even talking about like you then can gear up to be ready for him to play next year. You don't know if he's going to be able to play at the beginning of next year. So I feel like there's other running backs around the league that, I mean, Kareem Hunt is a great example, who is just somebody who's dangled out there right now to be like, hey, he's here. You guys want him? I think Chase Edmonds could be another one after what some of the stuff we've seen with Raheem Mostert, what he's doing, and Mike McDaniel loves his stable of running backs. He can always find someone else to plug in.
The only problem with that is Mostert will definitely get hurt the second Chase Edmonds leaves the team.
Well, yeah,
that's how that works,
well,
but
yeah. So I think we have I think, well, it would be interesting, and I would love. Look, I do support the Saints. Like, they're like my NFC team. But that's another example where, look, it's blow up time.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we were talking about that earlier, and I mean, if Andy Dalton can get some health back, because what's killing them right now is no Michael Thomas, no Jarvis Landry, no Marshawn Lattimore. Those are like 3 of your biggest names on the team. If they can get them back, Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to compete than Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
But we have no idea what this NFC South is, so
no.
It could be Andy Dalton.
It's a good point. So, what do you think, Tony? Any rumors you want to talk about a little bit now that you're back here with us?
For getting through the technical difficulties with me, but yeah, I'm back. So I think the really interesting one that I've been hearing, and Albert Breer with Sports Illustrated had a really great article, just kind of encapsulating a lot of the rumors that have been heard around the league with the trade deadline looming. And there's a big focus on pass rushers. I don't think Josh Allen for Jacksonville is available. Like, I don't think where they are in their life cycle, I don't think they're selling players. I don't think that Brian Burns is available. It would like a first plus another high pick, just because that's somebody who could see through the Carolina's rebuild.
They already
I would feel similar.
Yeah, they apparently already turned down 2 first-round picks for him. So that's
wow, yeah. Jesus.
I bet you that was the Eagles too. By the way,
the Eagles, or maybe like the Rams, and it was like a 24 and a 25, and that's what I don't know. Like, I feel like you got to take 2 first-round picks for that. But Bradley Chubb is another one where the Broncos shouldn't be tearing things down and trying to rebuild. They shouldn't be selling premium players, but they just handed a massive contract to Russell Wilson. They just spent a bunch of very high picks on Russell Wilson, and turns out things aren't going that well. So you need picks to start to reload that roster if you're going to be at all competitive during this Russell Wilson era. And fair amount. He's got to. They either have to pay him at the end of this year or trade him away and get some picks. And I could see a team like the Rams offering 24 and 25 firsts. I could see other teams offering a more immediate first-round pick with really nothing else on the deal because they do have to pony up the cash on a contract. But he's one that I do actually expect to get traded. I've seen Benjamin Albright, who is just super, super knowledgeable beat reporter for Denver, and he's almost come out and said, like, I do expect him to be traded, which I put a lot of weight on that. It would be really interesting. A lot of teams need pass rush. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to get him in their own division. So I do think it'll be like an NFC West team calling on him. And then the other interesting one that I think could happen is, so the Lions, they've been kind of, faltering. Their rebuild hasn't turned into wins yet, as much as I do love the culture Dan Campbell has going there. I've heard that TJ Hawkinson may be a player they look to move because you don't want to pay a tight end through your rebuild. And I think if you were to somehow put him in Miami, that would just be everything that they have been looking for that Mike Gesicki is not. And I would hate it. I would personally very much hate Hawkinson in the George Kittle role in Miami, but I think that would just be like an excellent pairing that might be like a big shock, and then it's just like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense for both sides.
I like it.
Very interesting. Yeah, I do think Gesicki should get moved. Is just a side note.
That's that's interesting. That's another one of somebody who needs to take him.
I actually talked about. I write for Wisconsin outlet as well. Occasionally when I can, I think the Packers should get Gesicki. I know they need receiver help. They need receiver help. But he's basically a receiver, and he would give them that middle of the field threat, down the seam threat that they don't have.
So interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, but I don't think it will happen. I think the Packers will just say,
Oh no, I think that's another team. Packers are standing pat. I don't think they're gonna do anything.
Yeah, they're gonna do nothing and just be like, hey, Aaron, listen, too bad. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we gave you the money, Aaron. Deal with it.
Too bad. Yeah. But no, so let's get into the games this week. Definitely want to not take too much longer on that. So let's move into the first game here. Carolina at Atlanta. This game, I can't believe I'm saying this, is for at least temporary first place in the NFC South. Unbelievable, first of all, but I'm just going to try to kind of skate past that fact because I don't want to think about it too much. It'll make my head hurt. Let's go to Tony. What do you think for this game? How do you see it going?
First point, that is so funny to me that the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons are playing for first place here in Week 8, and just how football season has been. I think that Atlanta is the better team. I think they're a team that is trending up. Like, they feel like they could be happy with the playoff appearance. I don't think Carolina would be happy if they made the playoffs this year.
They shouldn't be.
I'm going to give favor to Atlanta here. I say 27-21. I think their rushing offense just can put points on the board pretty quick. And the PJ Walker, I expect some points out of him, but he had the best game of his career and what will always be the best game of his career last week. So the magic wears off.
Fair enough. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I think and I said this in my preview piece I did 2 weeks ago after the firing of Matt Rule. With all the swirls and like rumors that were going around them, like there was no way they were going to be prepared for that next game that they played after he was fired. But I think last week was hey, our coach got fired. We need to respond, and that was the game. I don't. Atlanta's the better team. And it's wild to be saying this in this scenario. But I think Atlanta wins. I think either the Falcons or the Saints win the NFC South. I think that and the Saints being, if they can get people back, if they can get their playmakers back, then they have a chance. But the Falcons, that rushing attack is fantastic. It is awesome. And they found it out of nowhere. You had Cordero Patterson, yes. But then to have the backups of Tyler Algier and then Huntley, right? They're fantastic. And then you have Marcus Mariota, who also can run the ball as well. You just need Marcus Mariota to take care of the ball as well, and then they would be great. So I'm excited. The problem that that arises for me, that if the Falcons win this game and they do win the NFC South, is that they still desperately need to build this team, and I don't want them to think they're better than they are. Because I definitely think that because I still feel the same way about the Giants, and I'll get into that later, but. Those two teams are still technically rebuilding. Like there's so many holes in both rosters.
Absolutely. But so I do have Atlanta winning 24-17. I think that, like you guys kind of already said, they are the better team right now. I think that the rushing attack is going to be a little too much for Carolina to handle. Could definitely have a chance to tie it late. I do think it could be that type of game, but ultimately I think that they'll hold on, win 24-17.
I don't think I said my score, 27-13 Atlanta.
27. Okay, gotcha. Also rip Kyle Pitts, the new left tackle for the Falcons. I'm just going to talk about this real fast. I watched a video recently from somebody I respect very much, Brett Coleman on YouTube, talking about Kyle Pitts and the issues with why he hasn't been productive. And it's 95%, in my opinion, and also from what he kind of said, the way the offense is just structured and the way Mariota is playing, and a little bit why and how Pitts is playing. But they need to get him involved if they're going to be a good football team on offense. I don't care if all 10 passes they throw in the game go to him or whatever the case may be, or you could split it 5-5 with him in London, whatever the case is. They need to get him going and get him used like the way he should. And then I think they will have a very good chance of winning this division. So, but
given the status of that roster at the time when they drafted him, that is still such a strange selection.
It is. Especially if you're not going to use him as your number one, target. So,
well, not even that, if you were that intent on trading Matt Ryan and he wasn't a part of your long-term plan, why are you drafting him a tight end?
Yeah, I really think they thought they could compete still, but that's just
definitely. So, that came crashing down quick.
Yeah, but moving on to our next game, let's keep it up here. We got Chicago at Dallas. This is just tough if you're Chicago. Really nice win against New England last week. Fields finally looked a little comfortable. They ran him the way they should. The offense looked like I think it hopefully will and continue to look the rest of the year. But it's pretty tough. What do you think, Zach?
No, Justin Fields is running into a buzzsaw this week. It's gonna be bad. Look, we said it last week, and I'm a bit surprised. Normally, when Bill Belichick goes on a nice 5-10 minute diatribe about how good your offense is, when we've all watched you play, and your offense is not that good, but then they turned out to be that good. I didn't get to watch that game, so I'm a bit in the dark. But I was just watching the box score and very confused. That's not happening again this week. Dallas's defense is the second best defense in the league behind the Bills. Just straight up, statistic wise and all of that. Micah Parsons is a monster. He is going to have his way with Justin Fields in the backfield. 24-10 Dallas. I still think that Dallas is trying to work out some of their offensive issues and still get Dak Prescott into the rhythm of things. Not a bad thing, but he just missed 5 weeks with a hand injury. Yeah. So,
all right, what do you think, Tony?
Yeah, somewhat similar score, but Chicago covers. So I've got Dallas winning 21-14. I think takeaways from that surprise win over the Patriots, because we all remember last week on this show I predicted that the Bears would lose by like 40 points.
Something like that. Yeah, which I
that
mean,
didn't
fair.
happen.
Fair.
I think we all thought that.
Yeah. So
yeah, but the shocking thing was they finally decided to use Justin Fields, where beforehand they were not like.
You're cutting out every so often, Tony, just so you know. If you want to, I don't know if it's you're not close enough or what, but just want to let you know.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
Try to speak up, I guess, maybe. But they used him in the run game a ton, which I think really, really caught New England off guard. And it gives them a way to kind of mitigate the great pass rush that Dallas has. So I think they'll be able to survive, but because of that, it's going to be very rush happy and bleed a lot of clock. And so it's just going to be a low scoring game in general.
Fair enough. I have Chicago not covering, but barely, I believe, because I think it's 9.5. It's 27-17. I have Dallas winning. I think Dallas's offense will get going a little bit more this week overall. I do think that they'll be able to run the ball against Chicago, against Dallas. I think they'll run well, just not well enough to offset just the passing deficiencies with that offense. It's just too much with the secondary and the way that the pass rush has been for Dallas. So, but moving on to Miami at Detroit, let's go to Zach here for this one.
Yeah, so I have Miami winning this game 28-17. Look, Detroit gets some weapons back. DeAndre Swift's expected to play, but Detroit's defense is really, really, really bad. And I think this is exactly the week that Tua needed, because that's the one thing I will say about the Steelers is like their defense is strong. They have a good defense that can give people problems and keep them in those positions to win games.
Should have had 4 picks.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, they don't count though, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
They weren't caught. So I think Tua gets back on track with the offense and gets more points this week as opposed to just leaving some field goals on the field. But I don't know what the problem is in Detroit. I don't know. I don't know if it doesn't seem like it's coaching. It really doesn't. It really just seems like it's players just not like 100% getting it there completely, because from everything that we saw on Hard Knocks and everything that we've seen throughout the season, I've never seen somebody more passionate and somebody that I would go to war for every single day than Dan Campbell, which is why, as I said earlier, I'm glad that they're continuing to let him continue to figure this out. Detroit's just been in a rough way for quite some time, and it's going to take another. Last week was pretty rough, only scoring 6 points off the bye. You score a little more this week, but it's you're going to have to wait one more week to get that second win.
All right, fair enough. What do you think, Tony?
That just in a weird, I think it's going to be a weird game. I think Detroit finally gets their offense back on track just because DeAndre Swift is back, and I think that matters a lot to what they do on offense. And so I actually have them winning this game 28-24. Weird things happen in Detroit. Weird things happen with Miami, and why not a weird result?
Yeah, so I actually have the same score, but different results. I have 28-24 Miami. I do think the Lions offense does get better. I think they get back to more of what they were doing before injuries happen and, things like that. But that defense is still it's tough, right? Like Miami has Tua back. He looked really good the first, quarter and a half of the last game, and still just kind of adjusted and took away some of the stuff that was working early. And it just, he definitely needs to knock the rust off a bit, but this is a great week to get back on track.
Just don't throw your shoulder at defenders.
Yeah, don't do that either. Yeah, try not to do that. But I do think Miami gets back on track offensively, and they do enough defensively to come away with the win. So moving on, Arizona at Minnesota. I've struggled with this one a little bit just because it's weird the way Arizona is playing right now. The defense had kind of a resurgent performance against the Saints, and then, the offense still has its issues, but Hopkins is back. But what do you think about this one, Tony?
Oh. Can you guys?
It's cutting out still here and there, but that was better for a second there.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try to stick with this then. So I think that it's open shut. Minnesota's the better team here, and I think their offense is set up to play this Arizona defense pretty well. I don't know if Byron Murphy is going to be playing, but I know he's banged up, and that really hurts. I think Justin Jefferson's going to feast So I have Minnesota winning 31-24.
All right, what do you think here, Zach?
I think Arizona's going to win.
Okay.
I think last week was exactly what they needed to like start unloading and like really start getting things solved on the offense. I mean, yeah, he scored a lot, or he had a lot of yards. He didn't score. So Hopkins definitely gets in the end zone this week. But I also think another week of practice is going to allow them to figure out the areas where Hopkins is like super covered and unlock those places for Rondale Moore and start to get like the rest of this offense really going. My thing about the Vikings is outside of playing a suspect Packers team, they've won 4 1 possession games and lost to the Eagles. I think they're a bit more I'm not as hype on them as everybody else. And I kind of like sit there and I'm like, yeah, because it's Kirk Cousins. Like eventually this is all gonna come crashing down and we're not gonna be happy. So I think this is a week for Arizona where they're like they really have to start with the way that the NFC West is. Every win that they can get, they really need. So, and I don't trust them against their in division rivals. So they need to really get them in other ways.
Absolutely. So I do have actually the same score as Tony here. I have 31-24 Minnesota.
Oh, 24-20.
24-20 Arizona.
I keep forgetting.
But so I do think that Minnesota, this is just a good matchup for them from secondary versus receiver standpoint. I think that it's going to feed into what they do well. I do think Arizona does make it pretty close. I think that they are on the right track defensively more so now, especially. And then also having Hopkins back has made the offense hopefully going to flow a little bit better in the second week back. But I will say, just as a side note from kind of what Zach was talking about, I do view the Vikings as fraudulent. I love calling them that because I think it's very funny because it's just kind of what I think about them at this point. They have beaten one good football team at this current moment, in my opinion, like team that actually is legitimately going to challenge them in the NFC. And that was technically the Packers. And I don't even know if that's going to be the case based on what happens today, which.
Yeah. I think their opponents' records are 12-21. Combined record for the season,
yeah, something like that. It's not great. The only team
and 3 in division teams.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I feel like they aren't going to. They're not a true like 5-1 football team. Like not really. And
I have more respect for the Giants.
We'll get to them here in a little bit, but so that's my score there. But moving to Vegas versus New Orleans, at New Orleans, I should say, I struggle with this one a little bit too. Two teams that are both going through it right now for sure. What do you think about this one, Tony?
I also struggle with this one a little bit. I think it's pretty much a coin flip. Las Vegas's weapons, I think, are just great. And the way they've been leaning on Josh Jacobs, I think, has been really important for that team. And so I do have them winning 28-23, but I did struggle thinking about this game.
What do you think, Zach?
I have the Raiders winning 27-17. I think it's going to be another struggle for the Saints this week. The win last week for the Raiders, because the Raiders are another team. All the games they've lost by 1 possession, and then when they win big. Now, granted, they beat the Broncos and the Texans, so I mean, put that in with your grain of salt for whatever you want. But I definitely feel like the Saints kind of fit in that same category as those 2 other teams of 2 very, very, very underwhelming offenses who have not shown us much at all this year. And Las Vegas has done a good job at taking advantage of that. Andy Dalton needs to take care of the ball. And I don't think he magically starts doing that this week. He needs his receivers back. That is the problem. Like, call him slant boy all you want, but Michael Thomas has a positive effect on the field for the Saints. Jarvis Landry has a positive effect on the field for the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore will not be there to shadow Devontae Adams and make sure he is shut down. They are missing actually quite a few defensive backs, if I'm not mistaken. New Orleans is. Let me check real quick because I'm pretty sure Adebo is questionable. Oh no, they've put him. He's full go now. But so Marshall Lattimore's out. Bradley Roby's still on IR. PJ Williams is on IR. Smoke Monday's on IR. They're not healthy. This is gonna be a bad game. For New Orleans.
Yeah, I have Las Vegas winning 27-26. I think this is going to be actually pretty close. I do think that Dalton does get things moving a little bit more on the offense early. I'm hoping that Kamara, whether this is his last game or not, does have a big impact on the game. I think he very well could against the Chargers defense. But I do see Las Vegas pulling it out probably late with like a field goal type of thing. I do think it's going to be a better game than people are thinking. So, but let's move on to New England at the Jets here. I know immediately when I saw this game what way I'm leaning, but I want to hear from you guys, of course, first here. What do you think, Zach?
So I struggled with this one greatly because it is just so difficult for me to pick the Jets to beat the Patriots out of everything that I have seen over the past 15, 16 years of watching the AFC East. Now, my problem here, and I can't believe I'm saying this, New York's offense is much better than the Patriots offense right now. And I am factoring in Breece Hall's injury. I'm going to factor in Breece Hall's injury here. The Patriots offense is bad. I don't think it matters if you put Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi in. They're bad. You have two people who are calling an offense who shouldn't be calling an offense. And I don't know what they didn't see last year in Miami that thought that would work out, but one person for the offense, please. So I'm going to go the Jets, and I really hope they don't bite me. Well, I'm going to go Jets 23-17. There's going to be like a nice little drive at the end where they pull it off and figure it out. But Jets.
All right, what do you think, Tony?
I disagree. So as much as I think the Jets are resurgent, the Patriots are falling apart. The Jets not only lost Breece Hall, which matters big time, but they lost their best player, their most important player for the season, and that is Elijah Vera-Tucker. He played every position on that offensive line. He was easily a top 5 offensive lineman in the NFL up until he got injured. And I think that matters so much more than anything else, because you can bring in James Robinson, but that blocking scheme isn't going to work as well. So I have the Patriots winning 23-20 because I don't think Zach Wilson stands a chance without his best offensive lineman.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be tough, but I do actually think the Jets do pull this out 2017. I think that they can manufacture a couple scores, and the New England's offense is just really tough to watch right now, regardless of who's playing quarterback. I know Jones is going to get the start. Their quarterback situation just scares me. I don't like the way they're handling it in general, regardless of it. I think that you do need to just say this is the guy until he's hurt, right? Like whoever it is at this point, it should be Jones because of the draft capital, but it scares me a little bit. And as much as Wilson has struggled the last couple of weeks, I do think he's going to continue to get better. And the offensive line is definitely going to be something they have to figure out. But I'll take them in this game at least and kind of see where they go from there. But up next, a game that I don't even really want to think about. I'm not going to lie. It's not good. But yeah, Steelers travel to Philadelphia, and
it's the Battle of Pennsylvania, baby.
Yeah, sure. We'll call it battle. What do you think, Tony, for this one?
Hey, it's still a battle, even if one side brutally loses.
Right.
I have Philadelphia winning 34-20. This is just different classes of teams, different trajectories. It's just not going to be close. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you were much nicer than I. I have Philadelphia winning 31-9. Yeah, this is Philadelphia. They've played fantastic this year. They've built an incredible roster. Howie Roseman is a mastermind. Look, as we were saying in the trades, it's time to blow it up in Pittsburgh and really figure out where they stand for a deep, like at least a 2-3 year rebuild. Like it is time. You can do it. You're allowed.
Yeah. So I have 31-20. I do think that, mostly because the game's going to probably be out of hand by like the third quarter. I think that the offense gets a few drives going whenever the Eagles just don't care anymore. And
that's when they throw Robert Quinn in there.
I just want to listen. I had a tweet whenever that happened. I said, "Can we all agree to just keep Robert Quinn until like about 4:30 Eastern on Sunday? Just keep him in Chicago until then." But whatever. It's not like it matters that much. Like the pass rush is going to be good regardless. But I do think they pick up a couple late scores just because, and then it'll be enough for Tom to say, "Oh, we're moving in the right direction." Whatever. That it's going to be bad. I'm not going to really harp on it too much. All right, so now we have Tennessee at Houston. We talked about one of the quarterbacks starting in this matchup, but how do you guys see this game going? Let's go back to Zach here for this one.
I'm going with Tennessee winning 17-13. Look, we said it earlier. I do think this is a weird spot for Malik Willis. Look, Houston is a bad team, but they also play teams very weird, and it's a divisional game. This is a divisional game. Those are always strange. Yeah. So it's going to be either one of two things. It's going to be this little low scoring, back and forth battle, or we see Malik Willis go absolutely balls to the walls and knock it out, which would be fantastic for them. But I just don't see that happening this week, mostly because I don't see that in the weapons that they have at receiver. Yeah. So they're gonna lean on Derrick Henry, run the heck out of the ball, and attempt to not have Dameon Pierce destroy them as well. So this is just going to be a ground and pound game all around.
All right, what do you think, Tony?
Yeah, ground and pound game is exactly what this is going to be. I have Tennessee winning a close one and 23-21. I do think that Dameon Pierce and Brandon Cooks, and potentially his last game as a Texan, are going to be able to put up some points on this Tennessee defense. But like I said earlier with Malik Willis, I think his rushing ability is going to be heavily leaned on. And I think that helps mute the bad receiving core. Like, you don't have to worry about having good receivers if you have Derrick Henry and Malik Willis who can both pop off for 80 yards. So expect a long run out of one of them.
Fair. I actually have Houston winning 21-17. I think that starting rookie quarterback is always a crapshoot, and it can be definitely difficult. I think enough plays are made by Houston on offense, and Tennessee does have to kind of force Willis to do more than they want him to have to do, and he does kind of end the game at one point. Something I can say that I've experienced, unfortunately, with the rookie quarterback this year. So
I do think a point in Willis's favor compared to all the other quarterbacks, he did get a week of first reps. So
this is true.
That's the one thing where I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, it's possible, but I do have Houston winning that one. So let's move Washington at Indianapolis. Man, this feels bad if you're Colts, right? Like
this game is also rife with storylines because these two franchises are connected really strangely.
Yeah, there's so much happening here. We won't see a certain person who I think you're referring to, especially, but let's go to Tony. What do you think for this one?
Yeah, so this is just going to be a weird game. I think I want to watch it, but it's like I don't want to watch it either, like it's like I'm kombucha girl, like maybe I don't know. But I have Washington winning this one 27-23 just because I think Taylor Heineke has experience, which does matter, and they just beat the Packers. They're riding high. I think Heineke's going to get some Colts colored Jordans.
All right, I have. Sorry, Zach. I'm going to let you go first. I wanted to get into it, but
yeah, no. So I think, as you said, the person I was talking about, who did the Washington Commanders sign in the offseason? Carson Wentz, who's no longer starting and was benched. Maybe the Colts had a point. We're also sitting here in week 8 as the Colts just did the exact same thing. They signed a veteran quarterback in the offseason and have now been forced to bench him for the backup. And as you just said, Tony, I think the biggest thing for Washington here compared to Indianapolis is Sam Ehlinger has not thrown. We're not even talking about completed. We're not even talking about like played. He hasn't thrown an NFL pass yet. He's rushed a couple times, but he's never thrown an NFL pass. This is going to be interesting. I think this is another instance with the Titans where they're going to be leaning on Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. And when it's time for Sam Ehlinger to make a play, it's not going to happen. Taylor Heineke, not only does he have experience, he has experience with this exact offense. Did he play last year? I don't remember if he played
Yeah, he was a starter last year.
He was a starter last year. Their quarterback timeline is the most ridiculous.
It was supposed to be Fitzpatrick, and then he got hurt.
Because he also started the season before that.
The playoff game that he did.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So look, Washington's a weird team, but I like what they have overall on the offense. And when you put somebody who is just willing to go out and just like be a dude and play and just put whatever he has on the line to like just attempt to win the games. Look, the man makes mistakes, but he's gonna do everything he can to attempt to win the game. And there was a story this week on ESPN. That's what they love about him. That's what the team loves about him is like they will call upon him at any moment. And he's just there like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? I'm here. Let's go. Like I was in the XFL. Who am I to say no? So I don't have a score for that one. It's the only game I didn't score because I have no idea what's going to happen.
That's fair. So I have Washington 24-14. I think that Sam Ehlinger probably can't play. I'm just going to, like, if we're playing the odds here, probably can't play football very well. The NFL level. Good college quarterback, fun guy. Probably isn't good. Heineke, I don't necessarily think is good, but he's a quarterback that has started games, and I trust him to at least get some points if given the opportunity. I do think it's at a point, though, where if you're Washington, I think you should put Sam Howell in there because I think he's more talented, and at the very least, you know what you have in him then in a season that seems like it's going nowhere. So, but that's beside the point. I do like Heineke a lot. I think it's going to be fun to see what he does the rest of the year if he does. If he is going to be the guy the rest of the year. But yeah, with that game, I just feel like Washington's they're better because of the quarterback situation, which is weird to say. Yeah. So moving on, San Francisco at Los Angeles, Rams specifically. I think I know how this game is going to go just based on past precedent, but let's go back to Zach on this one. What do you think?
I do have San Francisco winning. I gave that little smile like I wasn't gonna have them win, but no, the Rams offense is awful, and that's really all where it ends. Even with San Francisco not having Debo, I think the bigger thing for San Francisco this week is that McCaffrey and Shanahan have had a week to sit at the San Francisco in San Francisco and plan and figure out how perfectly can we fit McCaffrey into this offensive game plan. You still have Ayuk. You still have all these other weapons on there. You still have Kittle. It's just going to be too much for a awful Los Angeles Rams offense this year. Like they literally did nothing and also lost Whitworth. And now they like we talked about the protection for Brady. Like, man, Matthew Stafford is having a rough season.
Yeah. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I think the precedent of Shanahan always has McVay's number in the regular season, and we saw it play out earlier this year. I have San Francisco winning 24-20. Just the better team right now, and I don't know what it's going to take for the Rams to get out of this funk, but I don't see it happening against a team as good as the 49ers are.
Yeah, I have San Fran winning 27-21. I think like we already talked about, and you guys talked about, like there's a precedent here. Right. And right now, the team that has played better overall, San Francisco. And I think the Rams just have so many issues up front. And we talked about Stafford. Like, yeah, is he playing well outside of that? No. But I think he'd be playing closer to what he played last year if they at least had competent offensive line play. So until that changes, which I don't see changing, they're probably going to have a rough year and down year. So
somebody besides Cooper Kupp to catch balls.
Yeah, that's a whole other problem. But
I also realized again, I didn't say my score 27-17, Los Angeles or San Francisco.
Gotcha. All right. So we're going to skip the next game because it's actually our game of the week. Unbelievably so, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let's go through these last two real quick. I don't think we'll have to talk too much, especially about this next one. Green Bay at Buffalo. We're going to obviously give this one to Tony first. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I think this is the first time in Rodgers' career he's been a double-digit underdog. He is undefeated on primetime, but Josh Allen's pretty darn good in primetime too, at home. Just teams in very different spots in their life right now, and it's going to show. It's going to be like a passing of the torch kind of game. I have the Bills winning 31-20, and even that, I think it's probably bigger than that.
All right, what do you think, Zach?
The only better passing of the torch could be if it was Philadelphia doing this to them, because then it would be in the NFC. But I still agree with you. This is going to be the like in out with the old guard, in with the new. Look, Rodgers is cooked. I've been saying it all season. They are done. He does not care. it's over. And again, at some point you can continue to sit there and say, oh, I don't have receivers. Oh, I don't have receivers. But look at the experience of your receivers. And eventually you have to shut up and be a leader and be like, hey, okay, well, this is what we need to do. Then I'm going to help you guys. I'm going to be the person to like actually take you under my wing and be like, this is what we got to do. Because unfortunately it's not their fault. And the only person you need to be complaining about is the front office. Yell at the front office, complain at the front office, but don't put your own guys down. Like I hated watching that and watching him just not care, because then what do they have to respect you for? Why would they want to do more? There's no reason, because you're just going to get crapped on every week. 35-13 Buffalo. Look, Green Bay couldn't get drives against Washington together. Buffalo is the best offense and defense in the league this year, statistically, by almost every category. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, I have 34-17 Buffalo. As much as I think, and I've always said this, I think if you look at everything about playing the position, right, I still think that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback to ever play this game. If you look at his skill set, like just the efficiency skill set, there's nothing he can't do on the field, right? Especially whenever he was in his prime. But the one thing I will always say about him is that because of the way he acts, the way his attitude is, the way he chooses to lead, it doesn't make it easier on his teammates whenever they aren't playing very well. And he doesn't have the guys that he trusts, because it's not just about talent. It's about trust, right? The way he plays is so particular and it's specific, and it makes him so great. But when he doesn't have it, he doesn't really adjust to it very well. And you've seen that this year. He expects so much of his teammates, as he should, but he doesn't always put the blame on anyone but them, right? And we know the front office is to blame for this. It is their fault that they don't have the receiving core that they should. It's their fault that they've never really had, at least from a draft capital standpoint and putting resources into it. They've never been able to do that for him, realistically. But at some point, you do have to say, well, I got to just make it work, and it hasn't happened. So I think they're going to get blown out, and I think nothing will change because the Packers front office will not do anything.
I would be interested to see. I want to go back and look at Devontae Adams' first season and see how he did the first year.
It wasn't Rodgers. He was not a good player.
Exactly my point. How are you expecting all of these brand new wide receivers to just walk into Green Bay and be like, "Oh, hello, Mr. Rodgers. I completely understand every nuance of your game." Eventually, you have to realize you're the problem. Yeah, eventually, you could play amazing, but if you're that nuanced, like, you can't be that way. You have to let them grow.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen this year. And they're going to struggle for it.
It's nuts.
But moving on to Cincinnati at Cleveland. Last game before we get into our game of the week, and then we can get out of here before 1:00 games roll around. By the way, just as a side note, Broncos do manage to come back and win against the Jaguars.
Hey, they did complete it.
So, and Trevor Lawrence, unfortunately for him, threw a pick on the first play of the drive that they had to go down and win. So, unfortunately, Jaguars fans, tough to see, but Russell Wilson, he's letting it ride today for sure. So let's move on.
Latavius Murray,
it's all those high knees.
Yeah, it's high knees.
Murray got
the hamstring.
Yeah,
but anyway, so
he was roasted for that.
I know. Yeah, moving on to that everything else. Tony, what do you think about Cleveland at Cincinnati here, or Cincinnati at Cleveland? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cincinnati winning 24-13. I just think that the Browns are not great, and Cincinnati is, as much as it hurts to miss Jamar Chase for what seems like a long time. They have so many other weapons. They'll be just fine for a game like this.
What do you think here, Zach?
Yeah, I think last week was really big for Cincinnati. It kind of broke them out of their slump, and against a team that is so great at playing teams close like the Falcons, that was big. I have Cincinnati winning 28-14. Cleveland's just in a bad way. We've been watching them, and Brissett's just, as we've said, backup quarterbacks can only go so long. And then you realize, oh yeah, you're a backup. You're not starting. And I think if they are able to salvage any of this season when Deshaun Watson returns, I will be absolutely floored. But I think it's going to get to the time here where Cleveland needs to worry about next season and just go ahead and just be like, hey, we knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, I have a closer game. I think it being in Cleveland helps them, but 24-21 Cincy. I think that the offense does have lots to figure out without Chase because a lot of what they do is based around his ability to win deep and the fact that it takes coverage away from people. So it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but I just think they're a better football team overall, and that Cleveland isn't going to be able to score enough points to make up the difference there. But last game we're going to talk about, and I picked it as game of the week for a reason, because these are two teams that are wildly overperforming based on roster talent and what we expect going into the season. That would be the Giants at Seattle, with Seattle currently and could take a pretty commanding lead, at least from where we're at right now in the division, believe it or not, in the NFC West. 4-3 right now for Seattle, and Giants famously 6-1, could be 7-1, which would be insane. How do you guys see this game going with these two surprise teams? Let's go to Zach here for this one first.
Okay. So I said it last week, and I thought the Jaguars were a very, very, very important game for the Giants to win, to like have some sort of like actual like belief that, okay, like maybe this team is good. I need one more game. I need the Seattle game to see how they do, just because as we just saw, we just saw it in the 9:30 game this morning. I don't know what it is about Jacksonville, but they just shoot themselves in the foot repeatedly. And it's literally, I think we were talking about in the ATB chat earlier. They're another team where every loss is actually this game in particular, which is nuts, that all the stuff that I said, and they did, they scored 17 points before this week. If the Jaguars had played the Broncos every week and scored 17 points, they would be 6-1.
Yeah.
And that's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
These are all one-loss games. These are all one, like just little possessions here and there. The Seahawks are not doing that. The Seahawks are winning games. They are competing. They are playing well. I am excited to see what happens. And I think it is just a bit too much for the Giants, and the Seahawks win 27-23. It being in Seattle, I think, is huge. That's a cross-country trip. Danny Dimes is getting himself beat up quite a bit, just getting thrown around and ragdolled. There was a Gridiron Heights video today where they had the hunting of the demon, and it was incredible because they had him throwing around. He's like, "Oh no, that's just coach's game plan." So the Giants have been incredible, and this has been a season of overachieving. I think what I'm starting to realize though about the Seahawks is that they're not necessarily overachieving. They're doing exactly what Pete Carroll wanted to do, and he just was not able to do that with Russell Wilson. There was just no opportunity, and he now has a quarterback who is literally sitting there and be like, "Hey, that's cool. I just want an opportunity to start," and it's working fantastically for both parties.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with anything there. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I also have Seattle winning just because I do think that cross-country trip. Also, if the Giants were to win this game, that puts them at 7-1, right? Then they have a bye, and then it's the Texans and the Lions. I just cannot imagine a world where we say the 9-1 New York Football Giants. So, but Seattle wins just because they have an explosive offense. I love Ken Walker. We needed him yesterday against Michigan. But I think he's going to pop off again. I think that they have the offensive weapons to get it done, and it's going to be close. 28-27 I have as the score. It's going to be a really exciting game. I agree. This is the game of the week. This is the one I want to be tuned into. I just think that Seattle gets it done at home, and the 9-1 Giants just wouldn't make sense to me.
I'll push your vision even further, and I'll add the next 2 weeks, because after the Lions, they play the Cowboys and the Commanders, and I'll give them a loss to the Cowboys. But the 10-2 New York Giants, that like even 9-1, that's one thing, but 10, that's when like to the double digit 10-2, that's nuts.
So I have the same score as Tony, but I'm sticking with the boys, because
they haven't let you down yet.
Listen, until at this point, like we've talked a lot about how I don't necessarily think the Giants are actually that great of a football team. I really don't. And I hate to say that about a 6-1 football team because it makes me sound stupid. Anyone who doesn't understand why I think that is going to be like, they're 6-1, man. You are who your record is. I'm aware. No. However, I just think that there's something about the way this team plays, and they make plays when they have to. Saquon Barkley's run last week against the Jaguars. the man just does stuff that no one else can do, is specifically when he has to do it this year. It's insane. And against a Seattle team that is giving up almost 5 yards per carry, as much as they've run the ball well, they've given up just as much to the other team. This could be a big day for Saquon Barkley, and enough of a big day to offset what Seattle's doing offensively. I have 28-27 Giants. I think Barkley has 2 touchdowns. I think he has 150 all-purpose yards. I think they lean on him heavily against a team that cannot stop the run, like I just talked about. And I think Seattle does make it close. And I think, honestly, they're probably the better football team realistically right now, especially when you look at the offense. But their defense hasn't played well, and I think it's going to continue to be the case. And we might see, like I said, a shootout type of game. But I'm going to stick with the Giants until they prove me otherwise, and they haven't proved me otherwise so far. So, but that'll wrap up this week, guys. Definitely thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk about everything here. But Zach, what do you got?
Weird development that just happened. So Eric Rowe is a healthy scratch for the Dolphins.
Oh, okay. With Brandon Jones out still?
Probably being traded.
Oh, maybe. That's
because he literally just tweeted 38 minutes ago, I'm just as shocked too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Keep an eye on that if you're a Dolphins fan. But
Miami could be making a move here for something.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Offensive line help, please.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week. Definitely enjoy the slate of games. Hopefully, if you caught the London game, it wasn't as bad as it kind of seemed like it was for most of it. But all right. Thank you, everybody. We'll be signing off. See you next week.